last night there was a discussion that happened because XQC was on the show, and XQC had brought up that he was giving his YouTuber 60% of the income from YouTube, and I actually got called out and got like a lot of not like a lot. I got 2 DMs and like a bunch of comments from chat. Which is like not a lot of hate for me these days. Like a good old fashioned Devin Nash witch hunt is at least 15 to 20 DMs at my current DEF CON level. So this didn't hit that, but it was enough to get me thinking about it. That like the way that I approached the situation last night. So just context on it. We're talking about the Scuffed podcast. This is Trainwreck's podcast. For those of you who don't know, I'm on a podcast every Thursday where we talk about stuff that's happening on Twitch and things like that. And it came up that XQC, which is one of the biggest content creators, was giving up 60% of his income to a YouTuber who he found because the YouTuber was pulling his clips in YouTube in the first place. So XQC just hired him and then left him to his own devices to take the content that he was doing anyway and give XQC 60% of the money. But my understanding is that the YouTube is not actually owned, or XQC doesn't log in to check the YouTube. So he doesn't even know if he's getting the 40%, right? Or if it's right. And this really pissed me off at a very fundamental level because I'm in the business of doing the reason why I'm in the talent side of things is to prevent things like this from happening, where content creators are getting taken advantage of. And then ironically, I get accused of the opposite, which is that I'm like trying to sell something to content creators. A pretty huge amount of content creators are absolutely at a high level. So like if we're talking, well, at all levels, but let's talk just in the top 5,000 creators on YouTube and Twitch. Probably somewhere north of 50% of them, and I bet the number would be a lot higher if I thought about it, are just getting straight f***ed. So the income that they could be making, they're not making. And I realize like being a content creator is not just about income, but it's an incredibly conceited point of view to think that, and lazy to think that like because you're at the top or because you're in the top 5,000, you're going to stay there, right? We know better than this, or we should know better than this. That like people that create content, they fall in and out of popularity, and a lot of people fall out of popularity, or they just get tired of it. So the first way that content creators get screwed is, let's say that the value of XQC is $100,000 for X hours, okay? And what I do is I negotiate the deal, or the person negotiating the deal creates a contract between the sponsor and the agency for $100,000. Then goes to the creator, who's XQC, and says, hey, I got you a deal for $20,000, which of course he's going to be like, well, that's fucking awesome, right? That's a lot of money to him. So then the agency creates a LP agreement, so limited partner agreement, with XQC for $20,000 and pockets the 80, but never tells XQC about the 80, who never asks. Then the agency has a pre-existing agreement to take 15 to 20% of all income the streamer makes. So then the agency enacts this what would you say, clause, this agreement, and takes, let's say, 20% of 20K, okay, which is what? Which is $4,000. Okay, so at the end, sponsor pays $100,000. Agency gets $84,000. Streamer or creator gets $16,000. Make sense? The original agreement was $100,000. The agency gets the $80,000 that they took off the top, plus the $4,000 they take off of the 20%, and the creator only gets $16,000. But the creator getting $16,000 is a lot of money to the creator, so they feel like they are they're set. Now, what I couldn't explain last night is the way that we do business at Nerd Fusion is we do the entire agreement and then we only do this part. So we take the money that we take a percentage of the income of the actual agreement, and we don't take anything off the top. We're super transparent about that. Do agencies hide this by bundling? Yeah, that's a very common way to do it. So you don't necessarily need to negotiate. Though I've seen it done with one streamer. I've seen that happen several times. But generally, it's done by bundling. Yeah. So as an agency, you might have like 15 to 30 talent. So you just say, okay, well, we're gonna use 7 of our talent, and they're gonna be worth this. Then you can kind of like hide behind that, and yeah, that happens often. It happens quite a bit. So like that's the first way that they get screwed, and then the second way that they get screwed is their own thing, which is like they don't take management, and then they do something like, okay, I'll give up 60% of my income to an editor, which is patently absurd by any metric. There's no reality where this would be giving up any equity of your YouTube channel is foolish to begin with. It doesn't make any sense. But the idea that you would give up, over 50% of your total income just so someone else can handle it is nuts. You should pay per video, and then you should have a bonus system. That's very generous based on the value that person adds. When I'm trying to like talk to creators, like the most depressing thing about this entire situation, and I was right when I said it, is I'm absolutely positive that XQC won't contact me. He'll continue doing the same thing that he did before, and I shouldn't say will contact me. We'll contact anyone, right? He'll continue doing the same thing he does before. And there's a thing that's just like perplexed me about content creators for so long, and it's this idea of like art versus business. It's a very classic like debate that is like a really, really crazy thing in my head that I think about a lot. I could never dream of creating the quality content that XQC creates, and I think I put on like a good show, and I'll be able to reiterate it, and I'll be really successful doing it, and the show will get better and better. I mean, just by virtue of the fact that like I'm thinking through it and I'm improving it, but I can't create the art that somebody like XQC can create. But there's like a blockade in my mind that prevents me from doing that kind of content. But in the same level, I think that XQC can never do what I do in business. And for some reason, these two things appear to be mutually exclusive. Like very rarely do you get an artist that can also do business at a very high level. Even really, really popular people like Kanye and things like that suffer from this. So like, I don't understand this dynamic. It seems like you need two different sides of the brain to solve this problem. But that's literally why agents exist, right? Is so that when you have a when you have a problem like this, you can go do your art, you can do your creation while somebody else looks after your stuff. Don't agencies provide extreme value to lazy streamers? Even if they take 80%, I find it crazy that Asmon, for example, hasn't uploaded anything to YouTube for a year. He's like the new ninja, but doesn't monetize it. Even a 90% deal seems better than what he does right now. Yeah, I agree. I don't think that that's justification for like people getting fucked by agencies, though. But so to be really clear, and I want to say this like super straightforward, right? The reason that streamers are not using agencies is not because there's a perception that agencies fuck them over. It's ignorance. It's pure laziness. That's it. These people are just lazy. They're unforgivably lazy. And like I'm openly okay with criticizing them on this. They're literally willing to sacrifice their future, millions of dollars, utterly millions of dollars, and it's just because they can't be fucked to put in even 5 hours of or whatever the number is. It's less than 10 hours of extra work to set something up in a few emails and just get it done. I got out of esports and into talent because the idea of influencers fascinate me. Right? The concept of like influencers, and here's what I'm passionate about. The fact that you can hold an audience that knows, likes, and trusts you, and you can broadcast good ideas or bad ones in real time to a group of people that can receive them and act on them. that the ripple effect that you can create through being a live influencer is so fucking interesting, particularly if you have a group as large as someone like XQC has. And it's like, even if, and like, this doesn't have to be just like pure value too, right? It doesn't have to be like business where it's like, okay, like, hello, today we are going to discuss the deplorable state of the economy, and we are going to talk about Keynesian economics in relation to, like, it doesn't have to be like that. Maybe it just makes your day better, right? And there's 20,000 people that are just happier because there's someone that's entertaining them or making them smile or whatever. That's fucking insanely cool, right? And what gets me so passionate about influencing, and the reason why I really like left esports is because I just don't see this corollary in esports. Esports is, you want to talk about monetization and you want to talk about like a straight line. Esports is boring as fuck. Esports is just, how do we get butts in the seats? How do we monetize these views? And how do we pay people? That's all it is. Esports is about the money, dude. It's not about the story. It's not about the narrative. LCS and everybody gave that up long ago. It's like franchising is just about the bottom dollar and everything, right? And like the only question in esports is it going to be profitable or is it not? And that's when. That's a fucking uninteresting problem to solve. That's why I stopped solving it, right? Like if you want to do something in your life that's fucking awesome, go solve a problem that's really interesting. I don't know what the problem is. You have to solve it, but that's the number one advice I have for a lot of people is like, if you want to figure out how to give your life meaning, go solve an interesting problem. And my life has been progressively jumping from problems that I find interesting. The number one problem that I find interesting right now is this, how do we forge the path for the new influencers who are coming in through Instagram and social media and Twitter and Twitch and YouTube, who have an enormous amount of almost tribal power where people are sort of like congregating around them and listening to what they have to say and also impacting what they have to say. And like, there's a sort of group think in these communities that's changing each other. How do we harness that or control it or make it good for the betterment of humanity? That's a super interesting problem to solve, right? And again, it doesn't have to be like sheer value in terms of like, oh yeah, like we're talking about business or we're talking about politics or we're talking about like solving like global issues or anything. It could just make people happier, right? Depression is a pandemic. People are fucking sad. People like people are lonely. People feel like they're without meaning. This is a gateway to that. I think that one of the unspoken beautiful things about Twitch, and one of the reasons why I still stream on this platform, is I think there's a lot of people that are lonely that watch streams, and they feel like correctly that the streamer is their friend and cares about them. And so that direct interaction is something that's like really special that we can only facilitate through this platform. And so making that happen is really interesting. So you have to understand that I sort of see broadcasters and great content creators as paragons. I see them as like when I think of the term influencer, I put a very large degree of weight to that word. And I think that influencers have an obligation to their communities to bring good about, and it's not always the case, but they should try. And communities have an obligation to their influencers to support them if they can. And there are a lot of ways to support someone, but I believe that there's that symbiotic relationship exists there, and that's really important to maintain. Okay, so by virtue of that, when I see influencers getting screwed by predatory agencies or by literally their own hubris, it frustrates me a great deal. And that's what's happening here, is that broadcasters and creators are not taking the very small amount of time to introspectively look at their business as a business and then push forward to like a frontier where their income is greater, their impact is more meaningful, and their future is more secure. There's like a symbiotic relationship that goes on between a content creator and an agency and a viewer. And it's so weird to me. It's like, here's the relationship, right? Streamer provides value, which could be entertainment, info, right, to viewer. Viewer provides value, views, donations, subs, to streamer. Okay? And this relationship to me is very sacred. I believe both sides have an obligation here. That the viewer has the obligation to provide value via views, donations, and subs, and the streamer provides value through entertainment and info. And that both should work hard to do this. And like, so the viewers, I assume that the vast majority of people want the streamers that they like to succeed, and they want them to do better, I think. So the fact that people would stand in the way of them getting represented by a management or agency and support this idea of giving like huge amounts of money away is like nuts, because like you're literally contributing to your broadcaster's failure. You know, you're actively contributing to that by supporting that. So what agencies and what a good agency or management company does, right, is facilitate value via sponsors and relationships to the streamer. And I think that's primarily. And secondarily, make their life easier, not harder, right?